Okay, so this next thing here, it goes into what I was talking about earlier in the voice file. In reading that case about U.S. versus Treasury employees, and in the dissent, it discusses the concept of appearance of corruption versus corruption. And that if you're talking about public corruption, the appearance of public corruption in terms of how it's reflecting the people, insofar as members, especially elected members of office, but not just members of elected office, also their staff and also people that work with the federal government, are representing the people under a system of understanding the role of the representative under the constitutional system of the people. And so, if there is corruption within the government, including in the performance of the duties of those in the government, including those elected, but also those that work for the government agencies, this reflects on the people. And then a refusal to repudiate the corruption then leaves a default of or a understanding of accedance to, if not actually promulgating corruption within the government and as an expression of the will of the people. And so this concept of appearance of corruption versus corruption becomes more poignant in understanding the role of the Republican representative to assure they're representing the people accurately. And so, is it a consequence of the will of the people manifesting in an appearance of corruption in the representation by the Republican representatives and those that work in the government? Or is it a flaw of that person in the role of the representative that is mischaracterizing or undermining or attempting to sabotage the people through a corruption that is expressed in what they're doing under the auspices of representing the people, right? So the difference between the appearance of the corruption and the concept of the corruption being proven in some sort of manner has a particular, you know, merit when a discussion is taken into account concerning the fact that they are only a representative of the people. Is this the corruption of the people? Or is it an individual that is corrupt, that is abusing their role as a representative of the people? And so then it reflects on the people as corrupt. And so if the leadership is engaging in acts of corruption as a means by which to corrupt the system that is supposed to represent the people, then you have an undermining of the government. You have an undermining of the government of the people of the United States of America. And in that, the course of that, the question then becomes, well, what is the redress in terms of the people being able to understand that corruption, insofar as it is a misrepresentation of them, then there are consequences for that misrepresentation. Well, what are the consequences? So then we're getting into this. There's a paragraph here that I'm reading. It says, but the Espionage Act went further. And then this is what it says. It says, a deemed criminal anyone who, and then quote, when the United States is at war, shall willfully make or convey false reports or false statements with intent to interfere with the operation or success of the military or naval forces of the United States, or to promote the success of its enemies, and whoever, when the United States is at war, shall willfully cause or attempt to cause insubordination, disloyalty, mutiny, or refusal of duty in the military or naval forces of the United States, or shall willfully obstruct the recruiting or enlistment service of the United States to the injury of the service or of the United States. Well, who is the United States? Is the United States individuals that are in a representative role of the people, or is the United States actually the people? And so there's this situation, right? But even after this concept of the United States is at war. And one of the things that has been specifically used as part of the refusal to address accountability under a constitutional system that has persisted for the last 20 years and that is absolutely materially relevant in what we're dealing with right now is the characterization and the promulgation of the war on terror and the war on drugs. And this concept of understanding that in a constitutional system, that a declaration of war by the president needs to be supported by Congress, and that there have been several decades of addressing this and dealing with actions committed by the military, ostensibly in the name of the people, i.e., the government of the United States, involving actions abroad, but that have also taken on a different dimension domestically when talking about trying to fight those wars internally. And so, if you have an intentional campaign of false reports and false statements that are misidentifying threats without giving people within the United States the capacity and the support that they need in order to protect themselves, and at the same time are infiltrating the military domestically and or engaging in illegal activities aimed at misappropriating a command authority structure or accountability structure regarding the United States military in order to allow for people that are not appropriately accountable to the same standards that those that are actually in the military would be accountable to access things concerning the military domestically with the intention of creating slander or creating and undermining effective leadership to be able to secure the country, then you have an act of interfering with the operation or success not only of the military and the naval forces of the United States, but you also have other kinds of acts to undermine the government of the people and the government of the United States. And so, one of the examples that has recently been happening is these kickbacks to people based on access to contracts through the Department of Defense, ostensibly for small business operations that have been coming up this year, that are unique this year. There are uniquely identified in various, in at least 3 of the days worth of Department of Defense contract awards that I've seen, specific contracts for small businesses that appear to lack the kind of specificity and the kind of established account structure that's happened with previous contract awards regarding the Department of Defense, and that I allege is part of an intentional campaign to create an ultra jurisdictional structure for expropriation from the United States military in order to redistribute it in acts of domestic unrest that are aimed at destabilizing the federal system through the Army Futures Command. And the fact that the Department of Defense has been allowed to award contracts through the Department of Defense to small businesses before the Army Futures Command was required to engage in confirmation that they had established an accountability structure for those small businesses to be contracted with the DoD is absolutely evidentiary of the original concern. That must have been apparent to anybody. I can't believe that Senator Cardin or anybody else in that commission would have been able to see that particular report and to have been a part of that hearing and to have not had the same concern. You're telling me that you want to have this kind of expansion and you want to be able to have this kind of access. You don't have a structure of accountability? Well, how have we seen that reflected? What was going on legislatively last year and what was creating the outroll of what we're now calling a health pandemic, and what was going on at the State Department for several years that was reflected in that audit that was published last year in 2019 that said for years the State Department was just not adhering to the law around confirming source, origin, and destination of transactions that were going through the Department of Defense, even though there was a specific legal requirement for particular kinds of information to be reported to Treasury since a law that went into effect in 2014. So there's at least 5